Is bulking dead? So I've had multiple people message me about this. Alex Leonidas, I like him very much, did a video. This has been a topic of discussion on many podcasts lately. And so I'm going to point out something that should be discussed, but I haven't heard anyone else point this out. When you look at overfeeding studies, so these people aren't even lifting weights, just overfeeding, they gain lean body mass. Oh, oh, wait, what? Yes. There are studies where they purposely just overfed people, for metabolic reasons and stuff like that. They're examining, what happens to your glucose and what happens to your HbA1c and what happens to your lipids, etc. But if you look through the data, not only did they gain fat mass, which is going to happen whenever you're overfeeding, um, but they also gained lean body mass. That's interesting. Now, why would that occur? Well, if you looked at sumo wrestlers, they have a ton of lean body mass. And actually, if you even look at like obese people, a lot of them have a lot of muscle mass. Now, don't get me wrong, they may be 50% body fat. But then you look at the amount of muscle mass they have, and they have far more muscle mass than the average person. Overfeeding leads to an increase in muscle and lean body mass. End of discussion as far as I'm concerned, but let's talk about bulking. As far as I can tell, as I listen to these various arguments of, bulking is dead, all that people are actually really saying is that dirty bulking is dead, which we already knew that. All of you that, have done it know that eating donuts and pizza and drinking a gallon of whole milk a day didn't lead to great gains in body mass, where, you gained more muscle than fat. Most of us that went down that path and did it, all of us did it at some point. We did the dirty bulk thing, and you gained more fat than you gained muscle. Okay. So you learned a lesson from that, and you were like, oh, maybe I don't need to be eating, a whole pint of Ben and Jerry's with a pizza every night. Yeah, it's fun. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to do the dirty bulk thing, but I mean, all of us that have done it found out that, I'm gaining fat at a rate faster than I can gain muscle. Now, muscle gain is very slow. Now, I'm going to point something out here, and this is Dr. Donald Layman, who definitely is an expert in protein. Um, and just to be clear, Justin Harris has said this as well, Troponin Nutrition. You can gain about 5 grams, yes, just 5 grams, of contractile tissue in 24 hours if you dialed in everything. If you did everything right, you ate the proper amount of protein and you spaced it out to maximize your mTOR signaling and all that stuff like that, and you lifted weights and did the resistance training and didn't do it excessively and all that stuff like that, you can gain about 5 grams of contractile tissue. Now, how many of us are going to do it perfectly? Probably none of us. But, you can gain about 5 grams of contractile tissue. Now, that's like jerky, okay? So we have steak versus jerky. So that contractile tissue is very small, but mind you, you may gain more like 25 grams once you account for, the water and the glycogen and everything like that comes with it, right? So we have to understand that contractile tissue, if you've ever done a cadaver lab, is really not all that impressive, but, muscle has volume to it due to the fact that if, it's, you drink a bunch of sodium or creatine or whatever, and the water mixed with it, it gets into the muscles, and the muscles swell, and your muscles look bigger than they actually are. It's like I said, it's steak versus beef jerky. So when you stop and think about the fact that you can only gain this small amount of muscle, do you need to have 1,000 calorie surplus every day? No, you certainly don't. But you do need to have a surplus, especially if you are not using drugs. And so as far as I'm concerned, okay, the bulking is not dead at all. Dirty bulking is dead. You don't need to be eating a whole bunch of junk, but like, it's fun, I'm gonna have a whole cheesecake. Um, but the deal with this entire discussion is really not that bulking is dead, even though it makes for a great headline, it makes for a great title. The reality is that dirty bulking or excessive calorie intake is unnecessary. That's the real takeaway. You can, you certainly can. You can eat 10,000 calories a day if you want to, but it's not necessary. So once you get to like a 200 to 300 calorie surplus, it's more than adequate for you to gain muscle. So what we're really discussing here is not whether or not bulking is dead, because even a 200 calorie surplus is still a surplus. Oh, wait, yeah. So basically, you have to have a surplus. It's just that your surplus doesn't need to be huge. You don't need to have a 500, 800, 1,000 calorie surplus. 200 to 300 calories is more than enough. Okay? And this makes sense, and anyone that's been doing this for any length of time already knows this through trial and error. You figured this out years ago whenever you tried to do something crazy and force feed yourself because you thought you could force, muscle growth. Now, mind you, yes, if you eat 10,000 calories a day, you'll probably gain more muscle than you would if you were only eating 200 calorie surplus, right? However, when you're eating that 10,000 calorie surplus, you're going to gain more fat than muscle, which becomes a pain in the ass because then you have to diet that off at the end. So, I mean, certainly we could sit here and say, oh, if you had 1,000 calorie surplus every day, you would gain more muscle than a 200 calorie surplus, but you're also going to gain more fat with it. So now it becomes a discussion of like efficiency and return on investment, right? It's like the whole thing of like people talk about maximum recoverable volume, and I don't think maximum recoverable volume is the best way for most people to train. Most of us should be thinking about return on investment. So it's like if I do one set, I gain X amount. If I do two sets, I don't gain 2X, right? So doing more volume, okay, each set is a slightly less stimulus, if you will. So if at 5 sets I gain, X amount of muscle, okay, doing 10 sets doesn't mean I double my muscle gain. If my maximum recoverable volume is I can do 20 sets and fully recover, sure, but like how much is every set after 10 adding to my muscle gain, right? And so now doing 20 sets, even if I just rest 3 minutes between sets, that's an extra half hour in the gym. Maybe this isn't efficient, right? So we want to think about like return on investment. If I invest $1,000 to make $1, that's not very efficient. Now I still came out ahead, but what if I could invest $50 and make 75? Yeah, that's not bad. What if I invest $1 and make $1? Those would be great investments. If I have to invest $10,000 to make $1, that's not a great investment. That's not a great return on my investment. Sure, I still came out ahead. I made my 10,000 back and plus one. And that's how you should think about training sometimes. Can I do a ton of volume? Sure, I could train for 4 hours a day. If I train for 4 hours a day, is that going to give me significantly larger results than training 1 hour a day? Maybe, maybe not. And so I think that a lot of this comes down to figuring out your best efficiency or return on investment or whatever word you want to use for it. And so I look at training volume very similar to how I look at diet. If you eat more, yes, you will gain weight faster. At some point, though, you're going to gain fat at a rate faster than you're gaining muscle. Therefore, your return on investment is not, it's not going to pay off the way you think it will. And so, this whole idea of bulking, yeah, we all need to bulk. But can you gain muscle in a caloric deficit? Sure. Novices, right, coming off of a layoff, if you've been off for a long period of time, or, of course, the people that are on drugs, okay? We know that trenbolone is used in cattle to improve feed efficiency. It means you can literally feed cattle less and they will gain muscle, okay? That being said, for the rest of us, especially if you're drug-free and you're advanced, or you've been training for 20 years, in order for you to gain any more muscle, you are going to have to eat more, and you are going to have to gain some weight. And that means some fat will probably come with it, because we're never going to dial it in perfectly. And so basically, I've just explained to you why bulking isn't dead. I mean, it never will be dead. It's like, this is just basically how it works. Like, you have to eat more, period. And so although it makes for a very sexy headline, once you actually read the studies, you realize that overfeeding studies, people gain lean body mass even without lifting weights. And then you look at the studies where, they argue that, the studies are being cited on, oh, you don't need to bulk. Well, they still had a caloric surplus. So you're still surplus versus surplus. This is like black versus red. Whenever you're drawing a graph and you're trying to figure out your net balance, you're still in the black here. So we're still in a positive balance. And that's one of the things that I don't know why people are I don't want to make criticism of people because I don't know their reasons, and I assume that sometimes people simply misspeak. I certainly misspeak all the time. But the point that I want to make here is that simply saying that bulking is dead, really the comment is more about how much of a surplus do we need, and the answer is you don't need as much of a surplus as you think you do. And that's the real answer, because bulking isn't dead. Everyone bulks, everyone does hypertrophy work. Even if you look at the best power lifters, they have more muscle mass. I mean, you look at guys that are my height, most of them are like weightlifting, right? Olympic weightlifters that are my height, they're like 109 kilos. Oh, yeah. They carry more muscle mass than I do. So, like, it's just that simple. I mean, even when you look at powerlifters, like, the strongest guys carry the most muscle mass per, centimeter of height. So, anyways, no, bulking isn't dead. It never will be dead. And hypertrophy work isn't dead. It never will be. And at some point, you need to get bigger to get stronger. And at some point, you're going to have to eat more than you want to gain more weight. So that's it. That's as simple as I can make it. Anyways, that's all I have for you. I hope it's helpful. Most of you are under eating in the first place. I'm saying that to be mean. I mean that to be helpful. You're probably under eating in the first place. So start eating more.